समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
When the assassins had done their work, the scholar, journalist, and diplomat Lawrence Paul Elwell Sutton ruminated about why it had to be done. Really, he said, it seemed hardly fair that dignified and correct Western statesmanship should be defeated by the antics of incomprehensible Orientals. In that summer of 1951, the radical Iranian politician Mohammad Mossadegh had nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, Britain's prized oil concession. Furious, the West began quietly plotting his downfall, fearing that Iran was sliding towards communism. Last week, precision Israeli airstrikes blew apart the ferocious imperial facade of the theocracy that governs Iran, a system long sustained as much by bluff as by power. Iran's doddering Cold War era air defenses and much typed homegrown equivalents have failed to protect its critical military facilities, and the country's highest ranking officials have been sight through in a procession of intelligence led attacks. Iran's retaliatory strikes, launched with a fleet of low cost homemade ballistic missiles, have scored some hits, but nothing that effective. As the Americans and British did in 1953, though, Israel will likely need to go further and dismantle the regime itself if its strategy is to succeed. The reason is simple. Israel has acted to ensure that no rival power in the Middle East can be a threat to its own undisclosed nuclear arsenal. Nuclear experts like David Albright say there is so far little sign that deeply buried uranium enrichment facilities, such as those as Fordo, have suffered severe damage. Ending the war with the regime intact then could lead Iran to make the fateful decision to produce and test a nuclear weapon. That process could take far less time than most imagine. As the physicist Hui Zhang has pointed out, China managed to assemble a testable nuclear device in just 3 weeks in 1964, back then without the kinds of advanced equipment available today. Israel hopes its assault will open the door for Iranians fed up with their own regime to bring down the Ayatollahs, or alternately even for groups like the Islamic State or ethnic Baloch insurgents to turn the regime into an ungovernable mess. It's a high-stake gamble though, and one that could actually prove to be the undoing of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Even though Iran's missile capabilities have been talked up by experts across the world, the truth is the Ayatollah's military core is rusted through. Last year, a rare leak of radar screen images aired on Iranian news channels revealed that the Natanz facility was being defended by radar systems made by the Soviet Union in the 1970s, and that new homemade missiles lacked the capacity to effectively coordinate with them. Even the limited number of Russian-made systems supplied to Iran have proved incapable of shielding the country against Israel's advanced F-35 jets. To make things worse, Iran's Air Force relied largely on Cold War-era F-4 Phantom II and locally built derivatives of the Northrop F-5, both originally supplied by the United States before the revolution. The Iranian Air Force also had a small number of MiG-29s from the Soviet era, but neither China nor Russia had been willing to provide the Islamic Republic with modern fighter platforms, advanced missile systems, and advanced radar. Iran's retaliatory missile strikes on Israel in 2024 exposed the limitations in its Atmanirbhar missile program. Many missiles failed to launch, were intercepted by Israeli systems, or struck far off their intended targets. These shortcomings are predictable. Iran has been denied access by sanctions to technologies needed for precision guidance. The Iranian response to Israel strikes this week further demonstrates those weaknesses. While drones like the Hisa Shahid 136 have seen some success when used by Russia against Ukraine, that success comes in a vastly different battle space, where adversaries are in close contact and not heavily protected by air defenses. Israel, in contrast, has been able to provide its small territory with a layered air defense network, helped by the vast distances that slow moving drones have to travel from Iran, crossing over Iraq towards the Israeli border. Iran's top leadership, the New York Times reporter Farnaz Fasihi noted, also miscalculated the risk of an Israeli strike, assuming Israel would not act just days before scheduled negotiations with the United States. This allowed Israeli special forces to target top officials using agents already stationed on the ground. What remains unclear, though, is the strategic question. Can Israel's strikes actually prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons? And what might happen if they do not? Twin flashes of light over a remote island in the Indian Ocean captured by an American spy satellite in September 1979 established to the world that Israel had become the sixth nuclear power, following the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, China. French assistance historian Avner Cohen writes, helped Israel overcome the substantial technical and financial barriers to developing a nuclear bomb. France, ironically, helped lay the foundation for Iran's nuclear program. Faced with the threat of the Soviet Union and unpersuaded by Western security guarantees, Iran's monarch Shah Reza Pahlavi authorized a civil nuclear program that ran alongside a secret weapons project. In 1974, Iran signed contracts with the French company Framatome to build two pressurized water reactors, followed by a parallel deal with Germany to construct 6 more. Throughout the 1970s, commercial competition among France, Germany, and the United States, scholar Mustafa Kebaroglu writes, enabled countries like Pakistan, South Africa, Argentina, Brazil, Iran, and Libya to access sensitive nuclear technologies with relative ease. Ironically again, scholar Trita Parsi reminds us, Israel itself built the missile production facility that laid the foundation for Iran's modern guided missile program. Following the 1979 Islamic Revolution that toppled the Shah, Iran also signed a strategic cooperation agreement with Pakistan in 1987. This agreement gave Tehran access to blueprints and equipment from the black market network infamously run by Abdul Qadir Khan, as political scientist Molly McCalman's authoritative work shows. These developments were driven by the regime's lessons from the savage war with Saddam Hussein's Iraq, where it found itself facing a brutal conflict supported by the West. In response, then Parliament Speaker and Military Chief Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani declared, I quote, "We should fully equip ourselves both in the offensive and defensive use of chemical, bacteriological, and radiological weapons." For Iran's clerical regime then, existential worries about its Arab neighbors, not Israel, made nuclear capabilities a necessity. But for Israel, they created a rising threat that the country's leaders could not and would not tolerate. Stolen documents acquired by Israeli intelligence make it clear that Iran made a firm political decision in the late 1990s to pursue nuclear weapons capability. Likely, multiple circumstances shaped the decision. First, the Gulf War in 1990 had demonstrated that the United States could rapidly dismantle Saddam Hussein's military, forces that were far superior to Iran's. Then, despite the war's end, Iran continued to face a threat from Iraq. The Iranian leadership ordered scientists to develop 5 10-kiloton nuclear bombs as an initial deterrent. The event of 9/11, though, and the discovery of the Khan nuclear smuggling network changed the world. In an effort to seek a rapprochement with the West, Iran partially halted its nuclear weapons work and opened its nuclear facilities and uranium stockpiles to inspection by the International Atomic Energy Agency. In 2015, Iran finally hammered out a deal with the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council plus Germany. In exchange for an end to sanctions, Iran committed to capping its uranium enrichment at 3.67%, well below the 20% threshold that allows for rapid further refinement to weapons grade levels. But in 2019, under pressure from Israel, President Donald Trump resigned on the agreement. Israel argued that Iran's missile program gave it the capability to deliver a nuclear bomb, which, as its own experience showed, could be secretly assembled. Learning from that experience that sanctions didn't stop the development of an Iranian bomb, Trump's second term saw him reach out to reinstate the nuclear deal. Those were the negotiations that were about to have on the eve of the Israeli strikes. Trump's public statements suggest he tried to delay an Israeli strike while using the threat as a tool to extract concessions from Iran's leadership. Khalid bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's defense minister and the son of its monarch King Salman bin Abdulaziz, is also reported to have delivered a secret message to Iran in April, warning of Israeli military action if a deal was not made. Israel and the United States are now betting that Iran's leadership will acknowledge their military and economic weakness and return to the negotiating table. Trump, in particular, has held out a kind of olive branch after Israel strikes, promising Iran a second chance. But like all gambles, the outcome of this one is impossible to predict. Iran's leaders may conclude that they're better off rapidly producing a nuclear weapon and then using it to secure an even better bargain. And that could lead Israel to escalate its military campaign with unpredictable consequences, not just for Iran, but global energy markets and Arab states like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Even if Iran's regime were to collapse, the new dispensation will be driven by the same existential anxieties that led the Ayatollahs to seek a nuclear weapon. Remember, it wasn't the Ayatollahs that started this program. The CIA facilitated coup that overthrew Mossadegh might have beaten back the left in Iran, but it also laid the groundwork for the very missile and nuclear program that now threaten Israel. The dangerous truth is that the breakdown of the world order, whether through Russia's war in Ukraine or China's threats to countries like South Korea and Japan, is leading more and more nation states to wonder whether nuclear weapons are the price they must pay for survival. And that is all leading us into a new kind of world with hazards we can now only dimly conceive. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm a contributing editor with ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.